World leaders are setting a trap, and Donald Trump is stepping right into it. Right now, troops from Europe are landing on Greenland soil, and it's not a routine exercise. German, French, Norwegian, British, and Swedish soldiers are on high alert, training in the Arctic with one looming question on their minds: what if the United States invades? Sounds extreme, but here's the part that most aren't saying out loud. This could be a calculated move. These world powers aren't just preparing for a possible conflict. They're laying the groundwork for something far bigger. And if Trump doesn't back down, it won't just be a geopolitical shift. It could unravel the world order as we know it. Stay with me, because what happens next might change everything. This isn't just about military exercises. Europe is preparing for something much bigger. In a meeting with the commander of Joint Arctic Command, European leaders are rehearsing what could be a dangerous reality: a potential U.S. invasion of Greenland. It sounds like a scenario from a spy novel, but the stakes are higher than ever. And while they train, the clock is ticking. The question that keeps echoing is simple, yet terrifying. What if the United States pushes too far? What happens when global powers decide enough is enough? This is more than just a series of drills. It's a warning shot. But here's the twist that nobody is saying out loud. What if this tension leads to something far more explosive than anyone imagined? Don't look away. The next move could change the global order forever. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is Greenland suddenly the center of global military tension? It's not just about a piece of land, it's about control, strategic control. Donald Trump has made it clear he wants Greenland under U.S. control for national security purposes. His administration even floated the idea of paying Denmark for the island. But here's where things get interesting. While Trump's been fixated on Greenland, European leaders have been quietly fortifying their alliances. They're not just sitting back and watching. They're building a united front. From French President Macron to Canadian Prime Minister Carney, the message is clear. They're prepared to push back, and they won't be bullied. But here's what most aren't considering. This isn't just about Greenland. It's about a larger chessboard. If Trump pushes too hard, Europe could retaliate in ways that will shake the foundation of international diplomacy. Stay tuned, because the next phase of this global standoff could get even more dangerous. But it's not just about the economy or alliances. The rhetoric is turning personal. Skorin Gad, the former defense minister of Denmark, has gone public with strong criticism of the United States. He admits that he never thought he'd speak out against the U.S., but the tone of the Trump administration left him with no choice. He calls Trump's leadership indecent, a stark contrast to the loyal ally the U.S. once had in Denmark. And it doesn't stop there. Trump's own chief propagandist, Caroline Levitt, continues to push the narrative of a U.S. invasion of Greenland. According to her, talks between the U.S. and Denmark are intensifying, with discussions on acquiring Greenland happening every few weeks. So while Trump's team pushes forward, the world is watching closely, and many are asking the same thing. Will the U.S. push too hard, too fast, and set off a chain of events it can't control? Then there's the real escalation. Trump, not satisfied with diplomatic talks, begins using economic pressure as a weapon. He threatens to impose a 25% tariff on countries that don't support his plans for Greenland. This isn't just a simple negotiation tactic. It's a power move that could reshape global trade. But here's the twist. The tariff isn't just about Greenland. It's about flexing muscle, showing the world that the U.S. won't be pushed around. However, the reaction is swift and critical. Global leaders, especially in Europe, are not backing down. They've seen this play before: the trade wars, the threats, the pressure, but this time it could be different. The more Trump pushes, the more isolated the U.S. becomes. The question is, will he blink first, or will this standoff push the world into uncharted territory? As tensions rise, the cracks in the global order become more visible. The U.S., once the undisputed leader in international relations, is now facing a wave of opposition. Canada is strengthening its ties with China, while Europe is uniting against the prospect of a U.S. invasion. And it's not just about military readiness. New alliances are forming with nations like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, preparing for a defense pact that could shift the balance of power in the Middle East. Meanwhile, in Europe, NATO is beginning to fracture. Countries that once stood shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. are now questioning its leadership. The world is recalibrating, and Trump's moves are accelerating a shift that could change the geopolitical landscape forever. But here's the question that's never asked. If this fracture deepens, what will the U.S. have left to rely on. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: this global reset is gaining momentum. Now, let's take a step back. What's the real human impact of all this? At the heart of the matter, it's not just about international power plays or economic leverage. It's about you, the average person who's watching this unfold and wondering how it affects your life. As alliances shift and tensions rise, the stakes get higher. What happens when the U.S. becomes less reliable on the world stage? What happens when the global balance tips and the very systems we rely on begin to crumble? The cost isn't just in headlines, it's in your everyday life. From jobs to healthcare, from education to security, these shifts could change the way you live. And while the politicians debate, the rest of us are left to pick up the pieces. If this feels familiar, say so in the comments, because the world is changing, and it's not waiting for us to catch up. Let's take a closer look at the system that's allowing all of this to happen. It's not just about individual decisions, it's about a system of leverage and incentives that fuels this chaos. The U.S. has spent decades using its military might to maintain dominance, but now that power is being questioned. The world is no longer blindly following Washington's lead. European nations, China, and even Canada are recalibrating their strategies, building leverage in ways that sidestep U.S. influence. And as alliances shift, the U.S. finds itself in a weaker position. But here's the unsettling part. This isn't just a failure of leadership. It's the result of a system that prioritizes spectacle, fear, and short-term gains over long-term stability. This is how the world's power structures begin to collapse, slowly, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but a fractured order. Looking ahead, two paths are emerging. One possibility: the world continues down this path of escalating tension. The U.S. continues to push for Greenland, creating more fractures in its alliances, leading to deeper isolation. Economic and military standoffs become more common, with the U.S. increasingly sidelined as global players like China and Europe step into the void. But then there's the other path, a turning point, where diplomacy takes center stage and cooler heads prevail. Perhaps, after reaching the brink, the global powers find a way to avoid disaster, reestablishing old alliances and stabilizing the world order once again. But here's the catch. No one knows which path we'll take. Momentum is building, and the next move is already forming in the background. One wrong step, and the consequences could be irreversible. In the end, it all comes down to one harsh truth. The world is changing, and America may not be the one steering the ship anymore. The stakes are higher than they've ever been, and the choices made now will shape the future for generations. Trump's obsession with Greenland, his reliance on tariffs and threats, and the growing fractures in NATO all point to one reality. The U.S. is at a crossroads. Will it double down on outdated strategies, or will it adapt to a world where it's no longer the sole superpower? This is where the story truly begins. The geopolitical balance is in flux, and as the world shifts, so too will the very systems that have long governed us. One thing's for certain: this isn't the last you'll hear of Greenland. Make sure you're following for more analysis as this story continues to unfold.